last 200 years, our life expectancy has more than doubled. For instance, during the American Revolution, you could expect to live to the ripe old age of 35. But today, you can look forward to your 70s, maybe even your hundreds. Many of us think that as we get older, a decline in our physical abilities is inevitable. But research is showing that it's not necessarily true. We'll introduce you to a man who's proof that a healthy heart and a strong body don't have to fade after retirement age. It's another day at the pool for Dixon Hemphill. By the end of this week, like every week, Dixon will cross this pool at least 100 times.
I just can't imagine just sitting around and not doing something.
Dixon's training for a triathlon, one of the most demanding competitions in sports today. The race combines miles of swimming, running, and bicycling. At age 65, Dixon Hemphill is among the best triathletes in the country, in his age group, that is, and is consistently in first place. Evidence of his success covers the walls of the running store he owns.
I'm very competitive, and I like to do well when I get into a race, whether it's a road race or a triathlon.
Racing against time is what Dixon does best. But at age 65, he's reached what's considered his mental and physical turning point, retirement age. And no matter how fast he goes, old age is catching up.
If I have a training run that just doesn't go very well, I sort of blame it on my age.
Despite his excellent health, Dixon has noticed some changes over the years. The fact is, if you live long enough, those changes will happen to you.
Oh, we haven't gotten them yet.
You'll notice that your hair turns gray. That's because you lose hair pigment or color as you get older. It also falls out. Hair follicles in the scalp stop growing new hair. You'll also notice some changes in your eyes.
Seeing at night driving, I really don't like to take a long drive at night, and that's something fairly recent.
By age 40, the normally elastic lens in your eyes begins to stiffen, making it harder to focus. Your ears are the next trouble spot. Fragile inner ear cells that help conduct sound begin to weaken. That makes it harder to hear. What you do hear sounds garbled. After all that, your skin begins to sag. Over the years, the sun has damaged protein fibers in the skin's supportive middle layer, causing creases and wrinkles. You also may have started to gain weight. Men put on pounds above the waist. Women add them below. Pounds pile up because your metabolism slows down. Your heart is also aging, and heart disease is catching up with you. Because of your bad habits, the cholesterol in your blood has formed plaque on artery walls, and your coronary arteries are narrowing. And if that's not enough, there's cancer. It's more common as you age. For women, it's breast cancer. For men, prostate cancer. Some researchers believe that an aging immune system is to blame, making it less efficient in recognizing and destroying cancer cells. And finally, your memory may not be as sharp.
I do forget some things from time to time, and maybe a little more often now than I used to. Names.
That's because the loss of nerve cells in the brain speeds up as we get older, causing problems with our short-term memory, our ability to retain new information. But why does all this happen? Why do we age? Simply put, aging is a change in our body cells. In normal cells, the DNA, a kind of computer program that tells your cells what to do, begins to wear out, causing the cells to wear out as well. That makes it more difficult for them to carry out their normal work. There are several theories that explain why cells wear out. One is the damage theory. This says that as we age, our cells are damaged by internal malfunctions or external pollutants, viruses, radiation, and our bad habits. While healthy cells can repair this damage, aging cells cannot. Another is the program theory. This one suggests that a kind of cell clock starts ticking at conception and is programmed to run just so long and no longer. Our DNA computers carry instructions that cause our cells to grow, mature, age, and die. With all of this, it may seem that how you age is out of your control. But it's not entirely. These men are all part of a senior athlete study called Fitness After 50 that's conducted in part by scientists from the National Institute on Aging. Researchers are trying to find out how much of the aging process is really aging and how much is caused by a sedentary lifestyle. Does this mean exercise can help you live longer? Some studies say yes.
And in fact, it seems like there's a dose response that at least up to a certain level, the more active you are, the greater the effect on longevity.
Dr. Flegg and his colleagues are looking for clues that could one day improve the lives of all seniors, so they can be healthier, more active, and more productive later in life. Experts say you're never too old to begin exercising. Dixon Hemphill, for example, didn't take up serious triathlon competition until he was in his 60s.
Well, I'm really feel in better shape now than I was 20 or 30 years ago because I wasn't very active then.
Individuals like Mr. Hemphill, I guess, are kind of an inspiration to us younger generation because they're really in better physical conditioning status than probably the average sedentary 25 or 30-year-old.
There's no getting around it. Aging is inevitable. The good news is that you don't have to take getting old lying down. Remaining active, like Dixon Hemphill, means taking care of yourself. And the sooner you start, the better. We know that heart disease and cancer can take years off your life, but you can fight back. In our next report, we'll tell you about a father and son who found out that changing your lifestyle right now can mean added years in the future. Robert McIlvaney Sr. is 74 years old. His son Robert Jr. is 38. They may be different ages, but they have more in common than just their name.
I'm not as physically active as I used to be. Things like arthritis have slowed me down, and I'm just not a young buck anymore.
10 years ago, I could just walk outside and start running. Now I have to do more stretching. I have to warm up more before I do all sorts of exercises.
Together, this father and son are helping us all learn more about aging. The McIlvaneys are part of a national study on aging called the Baltimore Longitudinal Study. The goal of the study is to find out how to make getting older better.
What we hope to do is have people live longer and healthier so that as we get into our 70s, 80s, and 90s, that we will be able to continue to live a very vigorous and active and meaningful life.
Here they're testing heart function, bone density, and endurance. What researchers have found is that while aging is inevitable, good lifestyle habits can slow the process down.
Yes, there appear to be a number of things that one can do in the lifestyle area to improve one's life, both qualitatively and in terms of longevity.
Here's a checklist to help get you started living longer, better. Don't smoke. You've heard it before, but experts agree that smoking can take years off your life. If you smoke, you're at greater risk of lung cancer, cervical cancer if you're a woman, and prostate cancer if you're a man.
Smoking's clearly a risk factor for a lot of diseases. It's clearly a risk factor for death.
Drink in moderation. Alcohol abuse can cause irreversible damage to the liver, but it can also damage the heart muscle, and a weakened heart can lead to congestive heart failure. Exercise regularly. It has a positive effect on your cholesterol levels, which could protect you from heart disease. Tests show that many symptoms of aging can be delayed by exercise, even an exercise program begun late in life. Watch your weight. Excessive weight gain is a risk factor for heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, but a slight increase in weight could actually be good for you.
After the age of 40, it seems that those people who actually weigh slightly more, not grossly obese, but slightly more, have a better chance of living longer than those who are very thin.
Eat sensibly, especially a diet low in fat and cholesterol and high in fiber. Recent studies suggest that such a diet can actually reverse the buildup of plaque in your arteries, and that could prevent a heart attack. And check yourself often for cancer. For women, that means mammograms, pap smears, and breast self-examination. For men, a yearly digital exam for prostate cancer and monthly self-exam for testicular cancer can help you find cancer early. And everyone should examine themselves regularly for skin cancer.
The cancer mortality rate in this country could be cut in half by early detection.
If you've checked most of the boxes, you're already on your way to a healthy old age. If you haven't, it's never too late to start. That's what this father and son found out.
I've modified my way of living that I think has helped me or prolonged my physical and mental efficiency.
It's important to do things in moderation. It's important to discipline yourself mentally and physically regarding your eating habits and making sure you get the proper amount of exercise and rest.
And that means enjoying a longer life that's also a life of good health.
Dr. Long, I guess the first question is to you. What do you think about that theory of how our cells age? Is it that they age by damaging, or that they're actually programmed to only last for a certain amount of time?
Sonia, I think that there's actually probably some merit to both of those theories. I think that certainly that there's always going to be some programming. As you know, you sort of be like your parents are, and I think there's a certain limit to how long we can live. I think there's little that can be done about that part of aging. I think the most important part, however, would be with the damage theory. I think certainly that there are a lot of things that we do in our day-to-day life that contribute to a much decrease in our life expectancy. The obvious things that were brought out in the previous tapes were, smoking, cholesterol, overweight, excessive drinking. These sort of things all contribute to, I think, a much shortened lifespan than we would have if we didn't do those sort of things.
Dr. Sigmund, Dr. Long talked about many of those risk factors. The good thing about them is that they seem to all be controllable. Have you noticed in your practice that people see the link between controlling those factors and how long they live?
Well, Sonia, a lot of people don't see that link, and they consider themselves invincible, that they're going to live forever, and they have control. They do have control over those situations, such as Dr. Long mentioned, smoking, not smoking, controlling the environment, wearing seat belts to prevent accidents. So there are some things that everyone can do to prolong their life.
How big a factor is smoking, Dr. Long?
Sonia, I think that probably of things that we can do as a society, smoking is probably one of the worst things you can do for your body. I had a chance to review some information, and of the top 16 causes of death in people over 65, smoking is the #1 risk factor in 8 of those 16 causes of death. So I think that, that simple thing, just putting those cigarettes down, could add 6 to 8 years to your life expectancy.
When we look at cancer mortality and the fact that it's increasing, Dr. Sigmund, smoking, we can definitely see the link to lung cancer, but those other cancers, why do we feel like they're increasing?
Well, for instance, skin cancer, the damage from the sun is a major factor. And as Dr. Long mentioned, smoking continues to cause other cancers like the prostate and the cervix. Various viruses that we get are linked. For instance, the papillomavirus, which is a virus that affects the cervix, is linked somewhat to cervical cancer. So, and those have some lifestyle issues tied into them.
When we talk about lifestyle issues, we hear so much about exercise and how it's important for us to be physically active. What is that actually doing for our bodies?
Sonia, I think there's a lot of controversy about exactly how exercise does improve, your life expectancy. Several of the things it certainly does is it improves quality of life. I think you're certainly more functional as you get older. You can do more things in that age bracket. And it just, it improves cholesterol, improves HDL, improves cardiac function, lung function, ability to deliver oxygen to the tissues. So I think overall, though, I think probably the main benefit from exercise, aside from living longer, is that you're just more functional in the later years of your life.
Do you think we focus too much on living longer? Should we be concentrating on the age or the quality of life, as Dr. Long mentioned?
Well, I think it's definitely the quality of life that we should strive for. Because as we age, for instance, brain cells don't regenerate, and so if we're going to be functional, we ought to strive to have a good quality of life rather than waiting and just extending our length of life.
Dr. Long, we left off with Dr. Sigmund mentioning that our brain cells are not going to regenerate. Immediately that brings to mind memory loss. Is there anything you can do to prevent that?
Sonia, I think everyone's familiar, predominantly with Alzheimer's disease. Unfortunately, at this point, there's really no great intervention for that type of memory loss. The thing that you need to be aware of, however, is if you have an elderly family member that is showing some signs of dementia, memory loss, there are a number of reversible reasons people have memory loss. Classically, being thyroid disease, depression, probably the leading reversible cause of dementia in the elderly population. But there are a number of things that would need to be looked into if you have a member that's having a problem in that way.
So would you say the thing to do is not to just accept that my grandmother is losing her memory, but to bring her in to the doctor for a checkup?
Definitely. I think periodic health screening for things such as Dr. Long mentioned, for thyroid disease, for other damaging factors which can cause aging would be appropriate. And the doctor can screen while they're there for cancer, various cancers. And also, if there is depression, as he mentioned, there are certain tests that can be given to determine the degree of depression, and certainly medication can be prescribed to help that.
We heard two kind of conflicting things in the stories. One, that moderate weight might not be so bad as we get old, and then that we want to watch how much weight we gain. How do you balance out what's good and how much is too much?
So from the way I interpreted the tape there, I think that moderate weight is probably healthy for women, and it's basically related to the fact that slight obesity in women causes the estrogen, the female hormone level, to stay up, which is thought to be a protective factor, and it's probably why women tend to live longer than men. However, the downside of being overweight, of course, is its increasing risk to heart disease. It puts added burden on the bones, arthritic conditions. So I think, in general, I think that the general population would be better not to be excessively overweight.
They mentioned how our life expectancy has changed over the years, but there are even other parts of the world that have longer life expectancy than we do. Does that say something about our lifestyle here in the States?
Yes, I believe it does. I think that Americans still live too freely in that they eat a lot of extra cholesterol-containing foods, probably don't exercise as much. We need to work more on the environmental factors in our lives that affect our aging process, etc.
There are not too many things that are reversible, yet we've always heard people talk about smoking, that if you stop smoking after a period of time, you are almost at the same health risk as a person who has never smoked. How early should we start trying to change? Is it never too late to change?
It's never too late to change, Sonia. In fact, there are studies showing that people that have been heavy smokers up to age 65 and then stop smoking, they've been compared to people that continue to smoke. And there's on general about a 5-year increase in age in that age bracket that stops even after 65. So I think that there's never too late to change your lifestyle.
Would you recommend any kind of particular exercise that helps the body?
I think, depending on the age bracket, if we're talking, strictly about elderly people, I think that swimming and walking are probably two safe exercises that people can do. They're not high impact exercises like this gentleman that was triathlete. You certainly, before you engage in something like that, I would recommend you check with your doctor to make sure you don't have some serious problem and are actually worsening your situation.
Dr. Sigmund, if you could kind of sum up for us, some people might find this a very depressing or very sad time, but what is it that you tell your patients to kind of help deal with the fact that life is changing? Is it coming up with realistic expectations, maybe?
Yes, I think they have to realize that they have to listen to their bodies and slow down, not completely withdraw, but also I think it's important to maintain good relationship, have friends, be active, and to continue to be active in their community and with their friends and relatives.